Hello and welcome to Peanutopia. In this first video I want to share my process of creating the Peanut Limousine. So about 2 years ago I had my first idea for a peanut inspired design, and it was long before I intended to make a bigger project out of this whole thing. But it was a little sketch for a pink car which is fueled with peanut oil. And yeah, later on I reworked it so that it looked like this. So yeah, you can see this limousine shape with an oil tank in the back and also some oil in the other parts of the car. Then here you can see these flash shapes, but in the end I got rid of them. So what was the most important thing to me was that the car panels look a little bit like a peanut shell, but they still are very shiny with this clear coat on top of them. And yeah, that's what I'll be showing you now, how I created this whole thing in 3D. And yeah, as you can see here, I also had some rough ideas for a fueling station, but I will discuss this one in another video. After having this rough sketch in mind, I modeled the whole thing in Blender, starting with the exterior, so at first the car panels, then I added the windows, the body kit to close up the bottom and also the parts behind the wheels, some other exterior pieces like the license plate, the front bumper, and a panel that goes around the glass tank. Some exterior glass pieces like the closing of the tank and also some rings inside the wheels and the headlights. For the wheels I came up with this shape to make them look a little bit more interesting. Then also some metal parts at the wheels, but also the door handles and this panel on the side. And finally some seals to close up the seams between the panels and the windows. So that's the exterior, and now let's move on to the interior of the car. Starting with the overall shell. Then moving on to the interior parts, like especially the dashboard, the chair shells, some interior glass parts. Also through many of these parts the oil is supposed to flow through. Then we have some fabric elements like the cushions for the chairs and also some carpets. And some other details like the steering wheel, speakers, handles, and other stuff. So yeah, that was basically it for the car model. I'll come to the oil part when we'll look at the textures. Then there's also this guide meshes collection, and it is there because of the modeling technique I used. I learned it from a course, the CG Masters 3D Cars Inside and Out in Blender. And in case you're interested in it, I'll put a link to it down into the description. For the materials, I wanted to make a combination of some PBR-based materials, but also some more basic graphic shaders. And the most important part were, of course, the car panels with their peanut shell structure. So for those, I wanted to create my own material. So here on the left side, you can see the preview of the material that I created in Substance Designer. And on the right side, you can see the preview of the node that is currently selected. Like now, for example, the base color. So let's look at the different parts of the graph and what they do. The first part creates the lines. I started just with a rectangle and then transformed it in different ways to get those lines. And to distort them a little bit, I used a cell texture to warp them. Then also I needed those levels because the contrast was very high. And with this contrast, the lines popped out just way too much. As you can see in the preview, I wanted them to appear a little bit softer, so I reduced it. And then I blended them together with the second part, so with the shell structure, which is created by two Voronoi textures that are also transformed in different ways to remove the contrast and blur them a little bit. So there's this first texture, which is more of an additional distortion, and then the second texture, which makes up this basic shell shape. And by mixing them together, I have this mix of the cells and also the stripes. So I'm using this as the normal texture. And for the roughness, I darkened it even a little bit more because I wanted the panel to be really shiny. For the metallic input, it's just a white canvas because it's supposed to be all the way metallic. And then for the base color, I have a mix of different color variations, one for the stripes and also one for the background. And they are also adjustable. So after exporting this graph as a material, I can change them to get different combinations of background and stripe colors. So yeah, these are basically the 4 textures that I used in Blender. In addition to that, the clear coat, but I did that just in Blender. And now we can move on to the next part, the texture painting in Substance Painter, where I apply this texture to the whole car. So next up, there are the textures done in Substance Painter. And these are honestly just the car panels and a little part of this front grille. But yeah, that's how the car looks in here. And for the panels, it's basically the same setup for all the different panel types. The only thing that differs are the color variations. So the masks that I applied onto them. But I will show you the setup here on the side panels. So starting with a dark brown texture, I added 2 different color variations, one light and one pink, and put them on top of that. And to have a smooth transition and blend between them, I used a watercolor brush to paint the masks. So where the white parts are, the new texture appears, and on the dark parts, the old texture that lies underneath appears. And then I kind of had this nice blend in between the different color variations. Then I also added some light brown spots to make the whole thing a little bit warmer. And for some more contrast, I painted the edges dark. And also at some other parts some lighter highlights. I think they are more visible in the front. Yeah, here around the headlight. And that's basically it. So the only other part where I used a substance material is this front metal part, where I also painted a little bit of color variation on top of it. And so these are the substance materials. Back in Blender, we can now take a look at the textured car with all the different shaders that I used. So first of all, of course, the car panels. They just have the different textures applied. The base color, metallic set to 1, but I did get rid of the roughness for now because it made this sparkle effect and it was way too shiny for me right now. So it's just set to 0.5. And I think this looks a little bit better. Then for some of the metal parts, I used this tone shader. It's a pretty basic setup, so it's just a principled BSDF with a shader to RGB node and then a color ramp to blend in between those 2 colors. and I set it to ease to have a little bit of a more smooth transition. Then for some other parts I used the same shader, just with a different color variation to make them appear a little bit darker. And as I mentioned, this front grille has just this painted texture with metallic turned up to 1. Then for the glass, I created this toned looking shader with some noisy effects so that it's not super clear everywhere. And yeah, that's it for the exterior. In the interior, I also used the tone shader and the glass. But in addition to that, I made this watercolor texture, which is powered by 2 Voronoi textures that are mixed together. And then with a color ramp, I can tweak the different colors. I applied this one to the chair shells and also lots of the interior parts. But for the carpets and the cushions, I wanted to have something that pops out a little bit, so I changed the colors to be more bluish. And in addition to that, I also used a normal map to get this fabric feeling. Then there are, of course, the oil parts. For now, it's just like a glowing yellow placeholder. But I will see when I animate this if I will also add some like little oil bubbles which are moving. So this is the whole setup now. Also, I'm using Eevee, not cycles, because I'm going for a more stylized look. For now, I will leave it like this. And then when I start animating, I might just do a few little adjustments. So that's how I went from this sketch to this 3D model. And now I'm really excited to animate it. But before I do that, I still have to work on the animatic, polish the whole story, and also some concepts for the environments and the characters. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing and sharing during the next weeks. And maybe I'll see you there. I would be very happy. Thank you and bye bye.